Hello, Julie here and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to share with you a layout that I created for Mystical Scrapbooks November challenge, and the challenge for this month is to scrap lift one of your favourite artists. I have chosen Missy Whidden and this is the layout that I have chosen to scrap lift. The papers I'm going to use for this is Uniquely Creative's Choose Your Adventure. Missy always uses mixed media on her layouts, so for this reason I'm going to give my sheet of white cardstock a coat of clear gesso. Then I'm going to set that aside to dry. In the original layout, the photo was about 3 inches square and the squares running down the side to embellish the page were about 1.5 inches square. Well, my photo is 6 inches square, so I increased the size of my squares to 2 inches. So I've picked an assortment of pattern papers from my pack and I've cut some 2-inch squares to play around with. The layout calls for a row of squares down the left-hand edge of the page and then 1 square above and 1 square below the photo. So I'm going to just play around with the placement of these squares to see which ones I like next to each other and make sure that I've got the right squares for the right spot. Once I'm happy with the placement of my squares, I'm just going to draw a rough line just basically around bits and pieces of my squares and my photo, just so I know where to make sure that my mixed media comes out past. To add colour to my background, I'm going to use Dilution's spray ink in Peony Blush and Vibrant Turquoise. I'm going to use the packaging technique to apply the colour to my background. This is something that Missy does quite often. So I sprinkle a little or dab a little of the ink onto an acrylic block, and then I use a piece of packaging and just move the ink around on the background. I also use water to move it around and get a bit more of a watercolour effect. If you don't use the water, you just tend to get more of a blob, so it's important to make sure that you spray it with water. Keep plenty of water on it and keep it moving around, and that way it blends nicely. So I continue with this method until I've got enough of this particular colour on my layout. I'm working mostly on the outside of that pencil line that I drew around my elements. So I want to make sure that this colour is seeable when I add my photo and my other pieces. Once I've got enough of the turquoise on the cardstock, I use my heat gun to dry it off. I'm going to add the Peony Blush on top of this, and I don't want it to instantly turn to purple, so I have to be a little bit careful and make sure that everything's as dry as I can make it. Now I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the Peony Blush. As I said, I want to limit the mixing of the blue and the pink. I don't want purple on it in any great amount. So if I do happen to get an area where the two colours are going to run together, I'll use a baby wipe to sort of mop that purpley coloured up. So I'm left basically with just my blues and pinks. I've chosen these colours because they fit in with the colours in the photograph. I used Black Magic Glimmer Mist to add a few splatters here and there. Another one of Missy's traits is she always adds some white tissue paper or clear tissue paper behind her photos, so that's what I'm going to do now. She will generally tear the tissue, so I tore mine. I made a bit of a mess of the tearing and had to neaten it up with my scissors, but I got there in the end. Time now to start on the other elements for my page. I'm going to start by inking around the edge of each of my squares. I don't know if you're familiar with Missy Whidden. She's got heaps and heaps of videos on YouTube, and I will put a link to her YouTube channel in the description box below, so you can nip over and check her out. I think you'll find her very interesting. It doesn't show up in the photo very well here, but the original layout shows me that she has only sort of attached her squares to the layout on one edge, on the left hand edge. So I'm just applying sellotape or double-sided tape to the left hand edge of each of the squares. Now I'm going to attach my squares down the left hand edge of my layout. I'm going to leave about 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the page. I'm trying to line them up nice and straight, and because my squares are 2 inches each, I'm going to fit 6 of them down the length of the layout. Time now to work out the position for the two other squares, the one that is above the photo and the one that is below the photo. So I will play around with these and decide which ones I want where, and then I will attach them. You can see here that one edge of each of those squares is not attached to the page. Because it's hard for a lot of things to attach on top of gesso, I have used my sewing machine and stitched over all of the squares. I've done some horizontal and some vertical stitching, and I've used black thread for that. I've got some sticky backed foam, craft foam here, so I'm going to choose a piece of that and cut it to size and put it on the back of my photo behind my tissue paper, and then use that to attach my photo to my layout. Not only I'll use the sticky part to attach to the back of the photo, and then I'll use some art glitter glue to attach the foam to the layout. I press that down very firmly to make sure that it stays in place. I fussy cut several elements from the pattern papers, and I'm going to use those to embellish my layout. To start, I'm going to use this tag, and with my crocodile I'm going to put a black eyelet in it. I threaded some red cord through it so that I could bring some of that red over to the right hand side of the page. Now it's time to start adding all of my embellishments to my page. I haven't pre-planned this, so I just play around with all my bits and pieces and position them where I think they might work, audition them here and there. And once I'm happy with how they look, I will use my art glitter glue to stick them into place. I've got quite a bit of red running down the left hand edge of my layout, so I want to bring a bit more red over to the right, so you'll find that there are lots of elements on the right that have some sort of red in them. Just while you're watching me put this together, if you're not already a subscriber to my channel, I'd really love it if you would subscribe. I'm trying to build up my subscriber numbers, and your help would be much appreciated. Also, if you leave me a comment or a like, that would be great. I answer every comment that's left. And if you click on that bell next to the subscribe button and select all, you'll be notified each time I upload a new video. I try to have at least one video a week. I think there's a little bit of stamping in the background of the original layout, so I'm going to use this stamp. Now, I don't know, I've had it for ages, I can't remember what brand it is. I think it could be Paper Artsy, but I wouldn't swear to it. Anyway, I'm going to use my Versafine Onyx black ink and just stamp this randomly on my layout. It's a long skinny stamp, and I just want to add some well, I suppose skinny thin line sort of detail to the layout. Now this next step is not on the original layout, but I like to have a border around my pages, so I'm going to take my Holtz ruler and a Uniball fine black pen and draw a double line with a few scribbles here and there, border around my whole page. I'm going to add my title to the tag on the right hand side of the photo. I'm using some black capital alphas stickers that I purchased from my local scrapbooking store. They weren't in a packet and I don't know what brand they are. I just purchased them loose. He had heaps of loose ones there, all different fonts and different colours. So that's what I'm going to use, stickers, for my title. I also use the same ruler and pen to put a double underline under my title. So now I've got some close-ups and still shots of my layout. Don't forget, this is for Mystical Scrapbooks November challenge, and the challenge is to scrap list your favourite scrapbooking artist. So pop over, check it out, and I hope you can submit a layout for the challenge.